and welcome to another Huddle Breakdown Extra Time. I'm your host Martin Murphy and joined as ever by James and by Alan. How are you guys? Still sweltering away there?
Yes,
yeah, a little bit.
Both sides of the Atlantic, from what I hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Just kind of chilling, taking it easy.
Being preserved. I'm in the very traumatic episode maritally here. This is the shoulder months when I get into arguments with my wife because she wants to turn on successive days. She wants to turn the heat on, and then she wants to turn the air conditioning on, and I'm like, let's just open the fucking windows and we'll kind of let it float back and forth a little bit here. Like I don't want the heat on in late April, early May, and I sure as hell don't want the air conditioning on that early. So it's gotten a little uncomfortable at night. The one night I'll give her, I conceded that to her, because I try not to concede any points as a good husband would. So yeah. So if I end up with a different background somewhere soon, it'll be because I'm divorced, and the shoulder months went horribly wrong this year.
We'll certainly look out for that.
The plague of insects that you've let in will be,
Oh no! Well, we have screens out, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, I was going to say it was all the moths eating into all those T-shirts and things. That's what I would be concerned about. And balmy down in Sheffield as well, Alan.
Glorious. Been 26 today. It's I don't tend to go outside when it's like this, to be honest.
Yeah,
too much for me.
Right. So quite a lot to pack in as ever in the extra time episode. As you would imagine, we'll be looking in some depth at the upcoming match at Ibrox at the weekend. Lots of poetry for Poetry Corner as well. We'll also be discussing our goal of the season. We'd ask subscribers to get back to us on that as well. And there'll be a few other points and something that just came out in terms of breaking news before we start to look into Ibrox. Apparently, Adidas, or Adidas if you prefer, have signed another 10-year deal with Celtic. They've agreed another deal there. Increased money again for the club. I think there's been no hard figures, but they're looking at upwards of 30 million a year on that, I believe. So all looking good there. James, have you any thoughts on the importance of that and the money coming into the club and how it compares to maybe previous years?
Yeah, so I keep you'll be shocked to hear this, Martin. I keep a spreadsheet that looks at time series of financial statements going all the way back. It's a little harder once you get back into the early 90s to get decent PDF versions of some of the reports.
Know what was happening in the early 90s financially. Just wake up screaming.
It's fun. It's fun. Talking about inflation earlier in the week, there's been a lot of inflation in a lot of things.
Yeah.
The numbers are much smaller, but and obviously the stadium size, that kind of stuff. But
yeah.
It's been a boondoggle over the term of the existing contract. So for fiscal 2024, which was June 30th last year, in the financial statements, it was just over about 30.5 million on what they call the merchandise line item. So again, we don't have 100% visibility into what goes into that, but I think that's a pretty decent proxy, and you can compare that season over season. And basically, if you go back to kind of the pandemic season forward, you're looking at moving from 15 million, which was obviously a down year because of lockdowns and COVID and everything. So you've basically had a doubling. But even if you go back to Brendan Rodgers' first tenure when he first arrived, so we're talking about almost a decade now, as we head into next season of annual reports, it'll be it's basically a doubling. It was about 16 million. 16.4 million in for fiscal 2017. So that tells you this, the scope of the growth in that kind of commercial operation. That's just one thing they do. That's not sponsorship. That's not a lot of other things that are going on at the club relative to commercial activities. So, so it's been a fruitful partnership, and it makes sense that both parties would want to continue because it seems to be a win-win. Design is a questionable thing that's very personal for people, and not usually all that relevant to us fat middle-aged guys that don't buy as many tops as we used to, maybe.
You'd be surprised how we can squeeze into them without shame.
I bought the most recent one I bought was the special one. It was, the Irish themed one that they do in March.
Yeah.
That was basically a knockoff of the Lisbon Lions top. So that's my middle-aged fat guy one that I wear when I go to the CSCs. But
anything related to that lovely Lisbon look, is always a big winner, a big seller with a Celtic support. Alan, just before I come to you with that, James, I suppose the obvious question here, it certainly seems good money for Celtic here and will be very important. Connected to what you guys were talking about with Laura the other day and about how the club are bringing in cash, how does it compare with our biggest rivals across the city?
Well, so I mean, obviously this is well reported. I mean, Celtic are in the top 20 globally.
Yeah,
we're amongst the creme de la creme of kit sales globally. So we basically dwarf the commercial operations of what goes on at Rangers. Now, there's some apples to oranges issues here as far as reporting on net versus gross revenue, and both clubs have some degree of retail operations, and it's not handled exactly the same as far as where those flow through on the financial statements. But just on a revenue basis, last season, so they have two line items. One is sponsorship and advertising, the other is commercial. So not sure exactly where the Castore deal flows through and gets a portion there, but combined those were 19 million. So I think that's a pretty good number for fiscal 2024 for their operation. For most commercial activity, basically non-football operation related, stadium and UEFA money from media rights, that kind of stuff. They have all that broken out in separate line items. So I think that's a pretty decent proxy. So we're almost double that total number with just our merchandising operation. And then that's not including sponsorship and various other activities that are likely going on. So yeah, that's above and beyond. Now it's a dual-edged sword. The part of that is it's a nice cushion to have financially above and beyond Champions League versus Europa League, stadium capacity, which is like an annual annuity advantage. But it's also an area that they theoretically could improve. Given the size of the gap there, though, that's a more complicated conversation about whether that's actually likely or not, or the degree with which they could achieve that. So, but just to put it into perspective, I mean, it's a significant material advantage. I mean, you're talking upwards of, let's say, 15 to 20 million per annum. And that's independent, like I said, of Champions League money or player trading or, anything else that's going on where there's also advantages to Celtic.
Probably good value for money in comparison as well to the Castore strips, which seem to rip like tissue paper, as Cyril Dessers demonstrated very ably in Europe. So a very good brand, Adidas. So Alan, what was your thoughts? And again, if you want to maybe link it a little bit with what you guys and Laura were saying there, because again, I think the board do get rightly in many respects a bit of flack, but that seems a pretty good deal.
Yeah, so I think Adidas have been obviously very happy with the relationship with Celtic. No court cases. That's good. Always pays not to end up in court with your commercial partners. It really does. I cannot emphasize that enough. So there's that aspect to it. I think, as James mentioned, the Origins merchandise that was developed, that was incredibly popular apparently, and Adidas are astonished at the sales in the States.
We hope you enjoyed this free preview from all of us here at the Huddle Breakdown. We know you have options and we really appreciate you tuning in. To hear the rest of this episode and for much more Huddle Breakdown content, head on over to www.huddlebreakdown.com. We hope you consider subscribing. Thank you.